Group.
And we're live, New Zealand. Kia ora Aotearoa. This is the Taxpayers Union 2023 election debate series coming to you live from Missio Cafe and Bar in Ilam in the mighty Christchurch. Hosted. That was your cue. Hosted by the Working Group, New Zealand's best weekly political podcast that isn't funded by New Zealand On Air. I'm your host for this evening, editor of the Daily Blog, Martin Bradbury, and joining me tonight is my podcast permanent panellist, the 132nd most important libertarian columnist at Stuff, Damien Grant. We're streaming live tonight. Don't clap, it'll only encourage him. We're streaming live tonight on the Daily Blog, Facebook, YouTube, and simulcast on Juice TV, Freeview 200. Brothers and sisters, fellow New Zealanders, comrades and citizens, thank you for tuning in to this most important of civic duties, which is to vote. In an age of disinformation, misinformation, and apathy, our democracy needs engaged citizens like never before. Let's ensure that tonight we are passionate in our debate and righteous in our argument, because there are only 100 democracies on earth, and we are blessed to be one of them. Tonight, we will debate the ideas while respecting the person, because no matter how you vote, we are all citizens and we all shake hands after the arguing. So before we begin, a toast, fellow citizens, to our democracy, and long may we debate it. To democracy! Right, let's get into the buggers. Tonight we will probe each candidate on issues that are confronting this electorate and the nation. We aren't just interested in their promises to Ilam, we are interested in how they will provide leadership on the big issues confronting New Zealand right now. Tonight, issue 1, cost of living crisis and the economy. Issue 2, housing and public services. And issue 3, crime and extremism. At the end of the debate, I will ask where we are going as a country, and each candidate will get 90 seconds to answer where they think the country is going and how voting for them and their party will impact that direction. I have to warn all 4 candidates now, I have an allergic reaction to party spin lines, and if I hear vacant answers to important questions, I shall not hesitate in being sarcastic. You won't like me when I get sarcastic. After I have quizzed you on each of these topics, Damien will challenge your answers and you will get a 60-second rebuttal to him. This election matters as New Zealand teeters on economic hard times and social cohesion breakdown. Before we introduce our candidates, invite them to give us their opening statements, I'd like to invite Callum Purvis from the Taxpayers Union to come on the stage and present us with the Courier polling for Ilam.
Thank you, Martin. So just before we get into the Ilam Electorate poll results, a little bit of background. Until 2020, the Ilam Electorate had been held by the National Party at every election since its creation in 1996, as had its predecessor seat of Fendalton. But at the last election, as part of the Red Wave, Sarah Pallett won the seat for Labour from the then incumbent MP Jerry Brownlee. But the red tide has receded quite a bit since October 2020, and it's going to take a long time to get through this. And the question is now how many of those seats Labour won in 2020 it can hold on to. Jerry Brownlee has decided not to stand for the Ilam Electorate this time and is a list-only candidate for National and has passed the mantle to new candidate Hamish Campbell. But there is... But there is another factor here in Ilam. The leader of the Opportunities Party, Raf Manji, who has set his sights on willing the Ilam electorate to secure his party's representation in Parliament. Raf previously stood as an independent candidate back in 2017, coming second to Jerry Brownlee. Completing the set of electorate candidates are Mike Davidson for the Greens, Juanita O'Connell for Democracy NZ, and Chris O'Brien for the New Conservatives. So let's see how the contest is shaping up. We conducted this poll last week on Wednesday, the 23rd of August, from a random selection of 5,000 phone numbers in the Ilam Electorate, 400 of whom agreed to participate in our poll, and it complies with the New Zealand Code of Practice for polling. Okay, so starting with country direction, which is a good measure of how people in the electorate are feeling. 48% of people thought that New Zealand was heading in the wrong direction, compared to 35% who thought New Zealand was heading in the right direction, with 17% who were undecided. That gives us a net country direction of minus 13%, which maybe doesn't sound good, but the national result, so in our recent August Taxpayers Union Courier poll nationwide, the result was minus 36%. So it's actually 23 points better here in Ilam than the country as a whole. Moving on to the most important local issue, it seems that people in Ilam weren't entirely sure what the most important local issue to them was, compared to Napier last week. So the top result was unsure on 24%, followed by other on 12%, then housing on 11%, cost of living also on 11%, 10% for law and order, public transport on 8%, health on 8%, roading on 5%, education on 4%, the economy on 3%, local council on 2%, and 3 voters on 2%. Well, it obviously didn't register, unfortunately, in the poll results. Okay, moving on to party vote. So first we'll go through all voters, how they said they were going to vote with their party vote at this election. 31% said they'd vote for National, 16% for Labour, 12% for the Greens, 9% for ACT, 4% for TOP, 4% for Te Pāti Māori, 3% for New Zealand First, 14% of voters were undecided, and 6% weren't playing ball and wouldn't give us an answer. They refused to tell us. So if we take out those who wouldn't give us an answer or were undecided, that's 39% for National, which is up 9 points on the 2020 election. 21% for Labour, down 24 points, so that represents a swing from Labour to National of 17 points. 15% for the Greens, up 5 points. 12% for ACT, up 3. TOP on 6, which is up 4 on the last election. New Zealand First on 5%, up 3 points, so they'd also be in if we were representing that nationally. And Te Pāti Māori on 4%, up 4 points. So if we move on to how people are voting now based on how they voted last time. So National got good voter retention, 75% of National voters voted for National last time. The most striking result here is if you look at the breakdown of the Labour vote, which is splintering. So Labour have only retained 38% of their 2020 party vote. Some of that, 10% has gone to National, 10% roughly has gone to Te Pāti Māori, 13% to the Greens, 3% to TOP on this is party vote. 21%, however, remain undecided on this measure. Let's move through those results. Sorry, a lot of clicking. Here we go. We also asked if people could name the electorate MP, the National and the TOP candidates. The name recognition for all candidates in this contest is relatively low and down on what we saw last week in Napier. So first, looking at the incumbent MP, Sarah Pallett, 38% could correctly identify her. We'd usually expect that to be around between 50 and 70% for an incumbent MP. 32% could correctly identify Hamish Campbell and 30% Raf Manji. 59% couldn't identify Sarah Pallett, 63% couldn't identify Hamish Campbell, and 70% couldn't identify Raf Manji. There was a couple of incorrect identification of candidates for Labour on 3% and National on 6%. We also asked, as we're doing for all of the electorates where we have an incumbent MP, how you would rate your incumbent MP's performance over the last year. 11% said very poor, 18% said poor. A quarter of voters said average on 25%, 12% said good, 2% said very good, and 32% were unsure. A common theme here in Ilam. So if we add up the good, that's a total of 14% for good or very good versus 29% for poor or very poor, which results in a net MP score of minus 15%. And let's get on to the main contest, I suppose, that you're all here to find out about tonight, which is the electorate vote. So we'll start again with all voters. Oh, and just to say, we prompted for the 6 declared candidates. So Hamish for National, Mike for the Greens, Raf for Top, Sarah for Labour, Chris O'Brien for New Conservatives, and Juanita O'Connell for Democracy NZ. As you will see, however, some people continue to say they were voting for parties, despite the fact those parties don't have an electorate candidate, but what can you do? So all voters, 33% for National, 15% for Labour, 14% for Top, 5% for ACT, despite not having a candidate, 5% for the Greens, 4% for Te Pāti Māori, who also don't have a candidate in the electorate, 1% for New Zealand First, I don't think they have one either, 1% for others, and 18% were unsure. 5% again refused to answer that question. So if we take out the undecided and refused, that's the decided vote score for the electorate poll was 43% for Hamish Campbell, 20% for Sarah Pallett, 18% for Raf Manji, 7% for ACT's fictional candidate, 6% for Mike Davidson, 5% for Te Pāti Māori again don't have a candidate, 1% for New Zealand First, and 1% for others. Again, the thing to stress is that 18% remain undecided, so that the result there represents a swing from Labour to National of 16 points. What does this mean? Hamish Campbell has a very strong lead, but only a third of voters have committed to supporting him for this election. That means that there are quite a number of voters who are still undecided, and it's theoretically possible for either Labour or Top to appeal for tactical votes and squeeze the support of other parties, because the second place is a statistical tie. The problem is, however, that there is no candidate with a clear lead in second place. If that were 5 points higher, then it might be easier to encourage those voters to switch across. But that is the result for Ilam.
Kia ora, everyone. Welcome back to the TV debate part of tonight. Let us begin tonight's event by introducing our invited candidates to this evening's live stream simulcast TV debate. From the National Party, Hamish Campbell. From the Green Party, Mike Davidson. From the Labour Party, Sarah Pallett. And from the Top Party, Raf Manji. Welcome to you all. Let's begin tonight with an opening 2 minutes from each of you on your vision for Ilam and Christchurch. Hamish Campbell, your 2 minutes starts now.
Well, hello everybody. It's great to see everybody here. I'm Hamish Campbell. I'm the national candidate for Ilam. Since that poll result suggests that I need to get my name recognition up, I thought I'd put that in early. One of the things that I probably should introduce myself, and that really kind of explain my vision for Ilam. I was born and bred here, and I'm blessed to be married to my beautiful wife Carol, and we're raising our 2 young daughters here in Ilam. We returned back to Ireland about 3 years ago after I had a successful international career in medical research. I have a PhD in cancer and viruses, and have worked in those areas in cancer, viruses, and autoimmune disease. Since being back, I have worked remotely. We also have 2 businesses. We have an online floristry business, and with family we run an organic apple orchard, and actually that was the first certified export apple orchard in Canterbury, and I think that's something that I'm quite proud of. Since being selected for the National Party, I've been working very hard around the electorate. I've knocked on the doors of over 13,500 voters. And that's really, thank you. And that's really given me a good grasp on what the issues that are facing the people of Ilam, so I can help with your Taxpayers poll. And I think really the first issue that I hear constantly is the cost of living crisis. The second is the sense of lawlessness, whether it's Liz Ensor, who was the 80-year-old lady attacked in Merivale car park in the middle of the day as someone tried to grab her handbag, or whether it's Kinjan Shah, who is the owner of the Cuts Mini Mart, who his dairy was ram-raided a couple of weeks ago, and he was just waiting for his dairy to be hit. These are some of the issues that we're hearing. Also, we have a failing healthcare system and falling education standards. And I think the people of Ilam want to have an MP who's consistently present in the electorate and is working hard, who's working hard for the people. And I think that's what I'm demonstrating.
Time. Thank you very much, Hamish. From the Green Party, Mike Davidson. Mike, your vision for Ilam and Christchurch, 2 minutes starts now.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, ko Mike Davidson, taku inua, Green Party candidate for Ilam. Look, I've probably got two simple visions for not just Ilam, but Otatahi, Christchurch and the whole of New Zealand. And that's one where everyone has what they need to thrive and also where our environment thrives. And when you look at Aotearoa, it is the land of plenty, so there's no reason why that vision shouldn't be a reality right now. But it's very clear, I think, that we have seen over many decades successive governments, no matter whether they're red or blue, engineering a system that actually serves the most privileged at the detriment of those who are most vulnerable and to our environment. It doesn't have to be that way, but we have to actually stop tinkering around the edges and actually make bold policy decisions to create systematic change. And those changes actually need to happen now. And if we actually do that, then we can actually create a country, electorate, a city where actually we all can thrive, where we all have enough money to actually meet our needs, where our environment also can thrive. That's why I'm running in Ilam. That's why I'm running for the Green Party. Kia ora.
Thank you, Mike. Sarah Pallett, your 2 minute vision for Ilam and Christchurch. Your time starts now.
Kia ora tātou, ko Sarah Pallett, toku ingoa. And if I were to believe the Taxpayers Union poll, I would literally spend 2 minutes just saying my name so that more people recognised it. But look, my vision for Ilam is really simple. My vision is one of fairness. Ilam, as we know, is a hugely diverse electorate. We've some of Christchurch's wealthiest residents, but we also have the second largest social housing area in the city. We have rural land to the west, we have urban land to the east, and we also have the most diverse electorate, with everybody from Afghan to Zimbabwean. But irrespective of where people live, their ethnic background or their gender, my vision is that everybody should have a fair go and should be treated fairly and equitably. Everyone needs a safe, warm, dry place to live, a decent school for their kids, a secure, well-paid job that fulfills them, access to skills and education to make a better life for themselves if they want, and quality healthcare when they need it. To be treated well by their employer and to be able to run their business successfully. For me, that's what fairness is, and that's what I want for everyone in Ilam, and that's what I've been working hard to achieve over the past 3 years. I'm not going to sell you promises of billions of dollars for Christchurch, not when we're near the middle of recovering from a pandemic, from a cyclone, and from flooding. I'm not going to make promises that I can't keep. But what I will say is that when we live in a fair society, everyone benefits. And fairness for everyone is a vision that's achievable because at the end of the day, the most important thing is people.
Thank you. Raf Manji, your 2-minute vision for Ilam and Christchurch, please, sir.
Thank you, Martin. We all want a safe and prosperous city and country. Now, safety means that we need to be able to go about our daily business and not worry that we're going to be impacted by crime or that our houses are going to be broken into. That's a basic level of service that we need to provide, and that's falling away. But the prosperity thing is the important stuff, and it's stuff we don't really talk about enough. What does a sustainable future economy look like? And we need to invest in innovation, in research, in technology. And we've got a lot of that here in Ilam. We've got a fantastic university that is delivering world-class research, academic output, and commercialization of innovation. We have fantastic tech companies here, like Tate Electronics, Sequent, Orbviz. This is actually, and it might surprise some of you, the best city in the country to live in. I spent a lot of time around the country over the last 12 to 18 months. We had a massive earthquake 12 years ago. Isn't it incredible how we've recovered? But we've got more to do. And we need to invest in our public transport, have a transport system that is fit for the future, invest in urban density, particularly in the city centre, and open up for businesses to innovate and bring in capital and talent. That is the future of this city. We've got everything here. We've got a fantastic international airport. The future is bright for Christchurch. We just need to get behind it.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
15
you,
minutes is great too.
Let's start with issue 1, the cost of living and the economy. Post-COVID build-back, New Zealand has been plunged into a cost of living crisis created by the urgent need to underwrite the economy during a once-in-a-century pandemic, exacerbated by an explosion of geopolitical frictions and global supply chain meltdowns that are literally importing inflation into the West. These machinations are cold comfort when week after week after week we feel the highest inflation rates for 30 years biting our pockets at the duopoly supermarkets or the petrol oligopoly. Every time you fill up your car or go to the supermarket, you feel mugged. Ilam voters said the cost of living crisis was one of their most important issues. Hamish, Campbell, the wealthy have donated over $8 million to National, and there is already a range of crony capitalism accusations being made, with Simeon Brown promoting intercity buses, who just happened to be a donor, and Chris Bishop promoting a property development that, lo and behold, just happened to be a donor. Who are National intending to serve if they win the election? The interests of the rich or the voters of New Zealand?
Well, actually, I have a very simple philosophy, and that is everybody deserves a fair shot at life. And actually, we need a strong economy to actually deliver a healthcare system in which we can get timely healthcare. We need a strong economy to actually get an education system where our kids can actually get the education they need, they can learn the basics, and so they can reach their dreams and aspirations. So the answer of your question, we are serving everybody.
Follow-up question. National have promised to slash government budgets and wasteful spending, but National hasn't really explained what they will cut or how they intend to fund their infrastructure programs. Is National simply relying on voters hating Labour rather than loving national policy?
No, that's not true. So the thing is, it's very clear. We've said that we are going to cut wasteful spending. We also need to retarget our economy and get it growing. And that includes retargeting the Reserve Bank, so it's focusing solely on inflation. We have got the government that is spending 80% more than it ever has before. That's really the biggest spender in the economy, driving up inflation. And that's why we feel it. When you go to the supermarket, you get whacked. When you go to the petrol pump, you get whacked. And it's rents that have gone up $175 on average a week. We have mortgages that have gone up $700 a fortnight. Those are big chunks of people. That's a lot of money you have to find each fortnight, each pay cycle, to pay for things that were at a lower level 5 years ago.
Damien Grant, your questions based on Hamish's answers, please.
Why aren't you cutting taxes?
Sorry, what did you say?
Why is this working? Can you hear me? Right. That's all great, but one of the things that we like to see from right-wing parties. Wait.
Easy, he's just stupid mouth. He's not really that racist. Jeez. Sorry, Damien, go for it.
You're very mean. Ween. One of the things that we like to see from parties on the conservative side of the spectrum
There we go.
is a reduction in the level of taxes. And your leader has been quite clear that they don't intend to cut taxes, at least as far as I understand, for the first 3 years. Why not?
Hamish, you have 60 seconds.
Well, actually, I think you'll have to wait till tomorrow for our tax policy. But the thing is, it's all about.
Do you have a snapshot? Do you get a secret
but
insight?
it all comes back to giving a reward for effort. And so the thing is, that's why we're saying if we're going to change the tax brackets, we don't have a tax problem in New Zealand. We have a spending problem, and our spending is out of control. And so we need to cut wasteful spending. The current government has suddenly found $4 billion of wasteful spending, so there's probably more to come where that is.
Are you going to cut the 39 cents in the dollar?
I said I won't announce a policy tonight. That will be tomorrow.
Thank you, Hamish.
No.
Mike Davidson. The Green Party have gloriously championed a wealth tax, and the socialist in me loves it. But you are basing most of your economic platform on gaining $12 billion out of 0.7% of the population. What happens if you don't get that amount of money out of such a small group of people?
What if they leave?
Where are they going to go to on a burning planet? Woo! Fuck off then. So I'm sorry. Please, continue. Go for it.
What you said. Look, I think the reality is there is enough wealth in Aotearoa that everyone can actually get by and have a decent life. And I've been doing a lot of door knocking in Ilam, and when I knock on the doors of Fendleton residents, they're not talking about the cost of living. It does not affect them like it affects students, or like it affects nurses, like it affects a lot of other people that are really struggling every single day. And it is unfair, the current tax system that we have, that people have to struggle that much. And it is unfair that people have kept generational wealth untaxed in capital assets. And it needs to change. And I don't need racist comments from the background. And the reality is, any policy decision that's bold is going to be difficult to implement, but that does not mean we should not do it.
Amen. Follow-up question. 3.7 million New Zealanders earning $125,000 or less will have more money in their pockets under your tax plan, but how does that impact inflation?
Look, I think the reality is, if we give money to people that actually are on lower incomes, they will spend it every single day and they will put it into the economy. If we're giving money to the rich, they just save it and it does not help.
So it will create inflation.
All right, well, let's
Damien, your question based on Mike's bewildering answers.
So let's just deal with that, because one of the things that wealthy people do, so Raf has told me, I don't know from personal experience, but one of the things that wealthy people
What do you do, Damien?
is they invest that money in things, in companies, and cafes, and restaurants, and supermarket duopolies. Or tech companies. If you are imposing a wealth tax on people who build things, aren't you creating a disincentive for people to build the sort of assets that are going to employ my children?
Mike, you have 60 seconds. Go for it.
Absolutely not. We're talking about a tiny. We're talking about
Let him answer.
a tiny percentage.
Let him speak.
Of the
Let him
population,
speak.
An absolutely tiny percentage of the population that have so much accumulated wealth. It is not funny. And yes, and it is actually unfair, the current tax system we have. And it is essential that if we want to let people actually get by in life without having to struggle every day to actually be able to decide whether they are going to heat their house or buy food, then we have to make bold changes. And it is absolutely unfair that people can hoard their wealth that is untaxed, and the system has to change.
Preach, brother, preach. Sarah Pallett, Labor have gutlessly ruled out a capital gains tax, a wealth tax, and a sugar tax.
Well done.
you will take GST off my banana. Is that enough? Is that enough in a cost of living crisis from a party that had an unprecedented MMP majority?
Please tell me that wasn't a metaphor.
I'm really not going to talk about your banana. Really not. However much you pay me. I'm going to defend taking GST off fruit and vegetables. So I think every little thing that we can do is going to help. And I'm passionately enthusiastic about ensuring that people have a better diet. I think we need to do everything we can to ensure that people with less money are able to afford fresh fruit and vegetables. I'm going to have like a little competition here with our friend here, who is. I'm going to actually count up how many National Party talking points you reel out because it's pretty entertaining.
Follow-up question. New data from the CTU and First Union released yesterday shows inflation isn't being generated by workers demanding more pay, but by price gouging corporations who are trying it on. Why do we have such poorly regulated capitalism that allows duopolies, oligopolies, and monopolies to screw over consumers?
That's something that we've taken strong action on. If you listen to Honourable Dr. Duncan Webb, who's the Minister for, as he describes it, he is an Honourable Doctor. No, he really is. He's a Minister. Sorry. Oh, Raf, get with the programme. I know you haven't been back long, but really. So one of the most important things that he highlighted was the importance in taking control of the supermarket duopoly. So that's why we've taken action to make sure that duopoly is broken. And you'll see as time rolls by that prices will be coming down as a result. Because you're right, it's a problem.
Damien Grant, your question's based on Sarah's answers. Go for it.
The idea of breaking up a system that delivers food for 98% of the country, a system that's working incredibly well.
I didn't say destroy it.
Well,
I say destroy it, not her.
okay,
I'm saying
right,
destroy it.
Is terribly, terribly frightening. But I just want to
Competition
deal.
isn't destruction, Damien.
Okay, let's just deal with GST. The current structure, where you're going to remove GST from fresh fruit and vegetables, that's going to help wealthy people, right? So Raf is going to be able to. He is going to derive the benefit. He is going to derive the benefit of GST off fresh fruit and vegetables. You do eat fresh fruit and vegetables? Look at his physique. You know he does. So what you've got? Let's say 5-10% of the population.
How long is this question going for? Jesus, I want GST off this question.
As long as you're a banana. If we're taking GST, if we've got 5-10% of the population is struggling, why are you taking GST off all of those of us who don't need it, and so those people who do need it, wouldn't it be better to give them a tax credit? Isn't this just the most egregious case of working class welfare? Look at these people here. These people do not need. They don't need GST off fruit and vegetables. Some of them look like they could use some hair dye, but.
Sarah, you have 60 seconds to rebut that madness. Go for it.
It's not the only action that we've taken to support people who are on low incomes, and I think it would be a mistake to say that it was. You know, we've delivered 100 million free lunches in schools. We've got free period products in schools, 20 hours of free early childhood education. There's many things that this government has done to actually support people, and taking GST on fruit and veg is just one of those many things. Increasing working for families. I mean, I could go on and on, but you'd die of boredom.
Thank you.
It's a long list. Seriously, but that's not the only thing. Everything, however small, helps.
Thank you, Sarah. Raf Manji. Raf, we are politically and economically deadlocked because the interests of the left and right dominate rather than reform. What does New Zealand need, and how can TOP provide it, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to think about what we want. We want a productive economy. I mean, New Zealand has hit a wall, and if it doesn't take some action soon, it's going to stagnate and it's going to go backwards, and that's a real problem. And we require a huge amount of investment into our future businesses. Our current focus around export markets, around dairy, sheep meat, logs, that's a sunset industry which is coming to an end. What's the future? Well, you look at the Chinese markets, you look at the dairy prices, you look at what's happening with competition around the world.
Yeah.
So we need to be investing. So our focus is getting our tax settings right to support business to invest. And that means taking our focus away from constant investment into property. You know, that is not the future. Constantly buying property, investment property. Actually, we want to be investing in businesses that deliver sustainable and prosperous outcomes and fantastic jobs.
Follow-up question, Raf. Why is a land tax better than what is being currently promoted by Labour, Greens, ACT, New Zealand First and National?
Because you can't move land. That's the thing. And there's no dead weight loss. I mean, that's a technical tax reason. But essentially, it is regarded as the most efficient tax to support affordable living. We want to raise income. So we actually have a tax switch, which we proposed last October, to cut income taxes. So have an income tax-free threshold of $15,000. It's actually the Australian system. We might as well join Australia at the rate.
Controversial call. Very controversial call. I do not support that.
Yeah. But essentially, we want to switch the burden away from incomes onto land. Speculating in land is not the path to future prosperity.
Damien
Developing
Grant,
businesses is the key.
Damien Grant, your questions based on Raf's answers, please.
Top's calling us to become the 7th or 8th states of Australia. That's a big call. Let's see how it plays out for him.
Did ZB hear that?
That's not actually your policy, just to be clear. Okay, all right. Damn.
I do like Australians, but...
What about America? We could become a 51st. Anyway, no, I'm moving on.
Christ's sakes, can we get to reality?
Talking about so the tax-free threshold is great, but you're also talking about a 45% tax on people earning $250,000 a year.
Amen.
And having a look at this room, some of those people are in that tax bracket. I mean, that gentleman is there, and there's at least...
You are in that tax bracket, not them, you.
Yes, at least one public servant I can see who will be on that. So, isn't that antithetical? You're talking about setting policies to encourage economic growth. Smashing almost 50% of a high-income earner's income, how is that consistent with encouraging people to invest?
You've got 60 seconds, Raf.
Take your time, ignore him.
I spoke to a guy who owns a tech company in Auckland. When he heard about the wealth tax, he said, I'm moving to Australia. And he's a young guy, he's an entrepreneur, cares about the environment, cares about climate change, is in the tech sector. We want people to earn wealth through creating stuff. Now, if you're earning 250... Look, please be quiet for a second. If you're earning over 250 grand, sorry, I'm not that worried, because the money that we're taking from that is investing in our future generations. So that's the trade-off. Everything we've proposed is about investing, and we want to invest in our young people. That's what the teal card is about. Some of that is coming from higher income tax rates at the top. The teal card is essentially...
30 seconds.
It's a gold card for young people, okay? So Winston, you did your job. You can retire now. We want to invest in young people. That's the future, mate. I mean, look, I'm sorry, that is the future. We've all got kids. We need to invest in them. End of story. Otherwise, you've got no future.
Sounds like Australia's the future at the top.
Let's move on to issue 2. Home ownership is at its lowest level in 70 years. We have 100,000 homeless in New Zealand. We are spending $1 million a day kettling beneficiaries into unsafe motels, while an entire generation of homeowners are locked out of the market. On top of this, first-time homeowners are facing steep mortgage repayments that could see some kicked out onto the street. All the while, public services are under stress like never before. Mike Davidson, in the first 100 days of a new Labour Green government, the Greens are promising controls on rent increases, a rental warrant of fitness, and thousands more new homes, plus the introduction of new renters' rights bills. There are 1.6 million renters. Why aren't the Greens polling higher?
Look, the most important polls on election day, and I think everyone's going to be a bit surprised about how well the Green Party does. Look, one of the things I've been really noticing when I've been walking around the streets of Ireland and talking to a lot of the young people is that they actually love this area, but they're getting priced out of it because they know they're not going to be able to live here unless they're staying in a 5-bedroom, cold, damp flat. And quite frankly, that's not good enough, and all of us that are over a certain age should be ashamed of ourselves for actually creating this situation. And the Greens are actually have great policies and plans that actually create systematic changes to actually help people into homes and to really help the renters. Our rental pledge will actually make sure people know what their rents are going to be every year by capping it. We'll have a warrant of fitness to ensure that people have warm, dry homes. And quite frankly, I think that's the minimum we should be doing to help renters who are actually some of the poorest people and struggling. And it's okay for people to sit in their warm houses, but come on, think about people that struggle every day. Have a look at the Green Party policy and plans, and you'll see it makes sense.
Preach, love it all. Follow-up question. There are 100,000 homeless and more people living in cars than under John Quay, and yet Marama Davidson is the Minister for Homelessness. How will another 3 years see any actual progress? Because all Minister Davidson has managed to do is count the homeless, not house them.
Give me the mic.
Mike?
Sorry, the homelessness has not happened over 3 years. It's taken decades to get to the taken decades of absolutely piss poor policies that actually created this situation. And the work that Marama is doing is actually really, really good. But we need to remember that actually she is not inside cabinet and therefore is limited in what she can actually do. So therefore the most important thing, if we want to actually see systematic change, where we can actually help people get into homes, then we need to ensure that we have more Green MPs in the next government and that those Green MPs are therefore in cabinet making the right decisions for this country and the most vulnerable people.
Preach, love it. Thank you, Mike. Damien Grant, your question based on Mike's answer.
Mike, can we just agree that this 100,000 homeless is just complete bunkum? I mean, there is not 100,000 homeless in New Zealand. I think there's about 3,000 people who are rough sleepers. So just to be clear, Martin is just making stuff up.
That's the numbers from the counting. So they're good at counting homeless, not so good at,
they're making them up. Anyway, Mike, you are formerly in the building trades? No?
No.
Okay,
Don't trust the research of a libertarian, ladies and gentlemen. It's very selfish.
That was the easiest question of the night.
He calls out his name during orgasm. I know.
Okay, all right. Let's just talk about the costs that your party is proposing to put on people who own rental homes. And again, look at this crowd. A lot of these people have got rental properties that are investment properties, and they are providing homes for renters. My question is, if you continue to put on all of these healthy homes, warrant of fitnesses, and all of this, and caps on rental
How will the
returns,
slumlords live?
Aren't you reducing the number of homes that are available for renters? You're making the problem worse, aren't you?
Absolutely not. Actually, most landlords are really good landlords trying to do the right thing. But the problem is we need to remember housing is not an investment. Housing is a human right. And renters have rights, and they have the right to be in a warm, dry home.
Well said, Mike. Well said. Sarah, Labor infamously declared they would build 100,000 affordable homes and utterly failed.
That's the 100,000.
Is the capacity of the state up to the challenges Labor needs it to face? Has neoliberalism gutted our ability for the state to respond? And isn't it time we brought back the Ministry of Works? Sarah.
In Christ, just round the corner, we have 32 Kainga order houses that are being built, nearly completed. In the rest of the electorate, we have about another 130. In New Zealand, this government has built 13,700 and some houses. We have built houses faster than any social housing faster than any government since the 1950s. It's a record that we can be really proud of, and that's what's going to really help to house your mythical 100,000 homeless people. I shouldn't joke. Homelessness is a really serious issue, and we do need to make every effort we possibly can. But just one point of interest. If the national government, in the previous 9 years, before Labour Greens government came in 2017, if they had been building at the same rate that we have in the past 6 years, there wouldn't be a social housing waiting list at all.
Amen.
And that's something that we really need to remember. So I'm hugely proud of our record on housing.
Follow-up question. Labour announced yesterday $4 billion in cuts to government budgets and wasteful spending. Why are we only seeing these cuts 6 weeks out from an election?
Well, you'd have to ask Grant that, I'm afraid. I mean, seriously.
Hold on, I'll call him.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think this is going to be a hugely popular point. We have a very, very capable and competent Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Yes, we do. We really do. It's like under enormously challenging situations, we've actually managed the economy to the point where we are actually doing really well on the global stage. No, we are. You have to take... Calm down, people.
The IMF might disagree with you.
Yep. If you look at inflation, for example, inflation has peaked and is coming down. We are predicting... No, you have to hear. I'm sorry that you don't like what you're hearing, but you do need to take a global perspective. And look, inflation has peaked, is on its way down again. We have...
That's true. That inflation is compared globally, we're way better. Damien, that's true. You're true. Damien, your questions, please.
Saying inflation has peaked is a bit like saying I'm no longer...
It's true, though.
Yeah, but it's like saying I'm no longer as mean to my dog this month as I was last month, because inflation,
Damien's very
Sarah,
mean.
inflation...
Compare it to the UK, Damien. Seriously.
Yes,
compared to the UK, it's true. That's true.
But you raised inflation, which was courageous and
hang
well done.
Hang on. I had the first time anybody has ever said, go back there then, to me. And I have to say,
there?
yeah, you said the UK and somebody says, you want to go back there then. That's the first time. No, not you. I beg your pardon. There's somebody from the audience.
Oh, to hell with
that's
them.
really, I'm really interested by that because that's the first time I've ever had that. But thank you.
Okay,
no, I don't want to go back to the UK. Thank you.
Let's ignore them. Let's talk about inflation, because inflation is having two really perverse impacts. For a lot of your supporters, the working poor and those on fixed incomes, inflation is a real massive burden on them. And for a lot of other people who have got mortgages, they are finding the level of mortgages that they are now paying, which is a direct function of the monetary and economic policies of this administration, that is causing an awful lot of grief. And taking GST off their fresh fruit and vegetables is going to do nothing to alleviate that. So how do you respond to the allegation that your government has actually made life incredibly more difficult for the working poor in this country?
I mean, I would disagree fundamentally with that statement, as you'd probably be unsurprised to learn. I think that what we're seeing we do have to actually take a look outside New Zealand and look at a global perspective. It's like we are not, we do, because global factors influence all of the things that we're talking about. Global factors influence the economy. We know that the war in Ukraine, for example, had a significant impact on the economy. They don't like it, but it's true. We know that the COVID pandemic had a significant impact on the economy. You might not want to hear it, but it's true. We know that inflation is a really significant problem for people in New Zealand. And I'm not sitting here going everything is rosy, because it's not. But what I am saying is that inflation has peaked, is on its way down, and it's predicted to be down between the 1% and 3% that the Reserve Bank wants to see us in by the end of next year.
2025. Raf Manji, how will TOP solve the housing crisis that National and Labor have only managed to make worse?
Yeah, it's a good question. Our focus is on the community housing sector. So we have a policy, it's a $3 billion fund for the community housing sector. Now, we believe that housing should be put into the hands of communities. We have over 100 community housing associations. I was speaking on Pacific Network Radio in Auckland today about a Pacifica community housing organisation. They're delivering homes for those communities, specific to the needs of those communities. Now, what we would probably do is actually shift housing out of Kaingaora. We don't think that the government does it particularly well. They obviously didn't do very well with Kiwi Belt. The community housing sector is delivering more homes than the government. And the government is competing with the community housing sector. So we say, put the money into the community housing sector, let them build the homes, let them build the communities.
Follow-up question, how will schools and hospitals get more funding under TOP?
Say that again?
How will hospitals and schools get more funding under TOP?
Well, look, it's very simple. You either raise taxes or you run a higher budget deficit. I mean, that's the operational side of funding. And we have underfunded our basic operational services. But more importantly, we've underinvested in the capital side of things. So we think we could run a higher debt limit for government. There are lots of long-term investments we need to make, like in Christchurch, I proposed here, a comprehensive cancer care centre. It's been promoted by the Christchurch Cancer Foundation for the last 3 years. If we don't scale up and invest in those core capital provisions that we need, we are facing a tsunami of problems in our health sector. The same with education. If we don't support our teachers, if we don't get kids to school, I mean, we're stuffed as a country. I mean, we really have to take serious action here. And we have to have the conversation and make some tough decisions. I mean, the next government has got some very challenging times ahead.
Damien, your questions to Raf, please.
You talk about this community housing thing. Give me an example of a community housing thing that builds houses.
Well, we've got one here in Christchurch, the Otautahi Community Housing Trust. Wellington Council has just given...
So the Christchurch one, how many houses are they building?
I don't know, actually. I don't know the exact amount, but the sector delivered more houses. That 12,000 houses that we hear that the government has delivered, 7,000 were delivered by the community housing sector. So they're delivering more than the government housing organisation, Kaingaora, but they're competing with each other. We actually just need to give the money to them. They've often got land and build houses.
All right. Yeah. The thing I want to challenge...
This is decentralisation. You know, I would have thought you'd have supported that.
No. What I do support, I support decentralisation down to the level of house builders. So when you think about the people who build houses, you think about Fletcher, you think about Mike Gree, you think about those guys who build massive amounts of houses on an industrial scale. Do you really believe that some touchy-feely kumbaya organisation where they all sit down there and swap their pronouns and eat gluten-free wine are the sort of people who are going to build the sort of houses that we need? That's a bit optimistic, isn't it?
It's not, because they've got the track record. They've delivered 7,000 homes. You have to remember, they will contract with the house builders. They will, and I've spoken to them. I said, if I came to you and said, can you deliver 100 houses in 12 to 18 months? They'd go, yeah. The problem is the government getting in the way, spending huge amounts of money on unnecessary bureaucracy, managerial overlays, when actually you've got organisations out there who often have land all over the country who want to build. Get them the money, get the contracts, build the houses. It's actually not that difficult.
Thank you, Raf. Hamish Campbell. The real estate pimps have poured millions in donations to National, and while National hasn't confirmed it yet, rumours are swirling that you will remove the foreign buyers ban, open the immigration floodgates, and allow foreign property speculation to drive house prices up. Is that all National have? Foreign property speculators who will drive domestic Kiwis out of home ownership?
Housing is a very important need, which everybody has discussed, and I think it's absolutely right. We have a shortage of houses in New Zealand. I think everybody probably agrees with that. We don't have a shortage of land to build houses. We've been tied up with regulations and lack of infrastructure to be able to deliver it. So what we're saying is we need to be able to go for growth. We need to rezone enough land now for 30 years of development. We saw here in Christchurch after the earthquake, when land was rezoned, the property prices prices here were stable, where other parts of the country went up. And what we're saying is we need to repeat that. We know that it works. Once again, we've seen with the financial settings and the monetary settings, we've seen hyperinflation of assets, and that's not helping. Look, it is tough for young people to get into the market. People are taking up big mortgages. We've seen interest rates go up. We've seen people paying an extra $700 a week in rent, and a fortnight in mortgage, sorry. And then if you're going to whack them with a land tax of a couple of $1,000s a year, that's even more money they need to find, and it's going to be even harder for people to get into the housing market.
Follow-up question. National are promising to give landlords the power to throw tenants out at will. Is this why the real estate pimps are pumping millions into National?
So the rental market's really interesting. I had a family member who moved to Christchurch to go to nursing school here, and we need more nurses. She went to 26 properties and put in 26 applications before she could find a place to rent. And we know that the rental supply has decreased by about 19%, probably due to some of the regulations and the war on landlords. And we've seen an increased demand of about 30% in rental properties. And it's not rocket science to work out if you reduce the supply and increase demand that rents are going to go up, and that's what we've seen with rents going up $175 on average a week.
Damien Grant, your questions based on Hamish's answers, please.
Why won't National commit to ripping up the Overseas Investment Act? The inability, New Zealand is one of the hardest countries in the world for foreign direct investment. It is a massive burden on our ability to attract the sort of capital, to build the infrastructure that we want. It will upset Martin enormously, and that's almost a reason to do it in itself. Why won't National commit to tearing up the Overseas Investment Act and allowing us access to international capital markets?
Announce the policy here.
I'm not going to announce a policy here. Look, there needs to be investment from a wide range of sources. We need investment to build more houses, but we do need to take a pragmatic approach to make sure that everybody benefits from the growth.
That you didn't answer the question. Why? I mean, why?
You didn't answer my question either, so that's just.
I'm not going to announce a policy here.
Let's move on to issue 3, and it is crime and extremism post-COVID. Media coverage of youth crime has exploded. Images of ram raids and organised crime violence has shocked, frightened and angered the country. Alongside this youth crime wave, we have organised crime turf wars as 501 syndicates stand over domestic gangs for the billion-dollar meth trade. Ilam voters said crime was their second largest issue of this election. Sarah, how do we deal with youth crime and organised crime?
That's an easy one to answer in 60 seconds, right? Youth crime and organised crime. We have seen, as you've highlighted, a really significant uptick in youth crime. And it's something that's extremely worrying from many particular perspectives. Obviously, every time somebody commits a crime, you have somebody committing a crime, but you also have a victim, which is something we need to avoid. We need to avoid somebody taking a life of crime, taking actions that are criminal, but we also need to avoid the creation of victims. So what we've seen in Auckland was the Better Pathways program and the circuit breaker, where what the minister asked for was that looking at the ram raids were being committed by roughly 100 young people only. And the minister asked, who are these people, what are they doing, and why are they committing these crimes? And the answers that they came up with enabled the government to actually create the Better Pathways program and the circuit breaker, because it turns out that these young people weren't born bad. They were born into highly dysfunctional families, some of them, and many of them, and for many of them, they had one or more of their parents or caregivers had been or were currently incarcerated, really high levels of family harm. Multiple issues were affecting these young people. And so we, with the Better Pathways program, went into the homes and actually had wraparound services that looked at what was going on for those families and what we could do to actually turn those kids' lives around, because nobody wants to lose a child to crime. Nobody wants to create victims. So we had to actually take a multi-pronged approach to it. It was extremely successful. And what we found at the end of that pilot was that about 75% of those young people did not go on to reoffend. So it was a profoundly successful program. And I and my other Christchurch MPs advocated strongly for that program to be brought here to Christchurch, which it has. Now, we're not seeing the results here yet because it's only just started, but we're anticipating that we're going to see what we saw in Auckland. The circuit breaker for young people, they're for the under 14s, right? They're for our children, I mean, they're children fundamentally, but they're committing crimes that are bad. We don't want them to be committing crimes, none of us do. And what we found with those kids is that very close to 100% of them have family violence in their lives and in their homes. And so there's lots of stuff that the government has been doing to try to reduce those levels of family harm. And yep, look, we need to take a multi-pronged approach. We need to do prevention, as I've outlined, with better pathways and the circuit breaker. We need to actually support. We need to support the victims of crime, but prevention is the most important aspect of this program.
Amen. Follow-up question, Sarah. Follow-up question. Prime Minister Chris Hipkins ruled New Zealand First out because of their extremism. As actor caught with candidates who compared getting a vaccine with concentration camps. Is political extremism a growing threat to our democracy?
I think it's extremely concerning, and I'm really glad that the Prime Minister took the action that he did.
Damien, your questions?
Well, talk about political extremism, Bomber. I'm not too sure that either you or I are in a position to take the home moral ground when it comes to extremism. By any rational definition, we are the most extreme people here. You talk about a multi-pronged approach. Incarceration must be part of that multi-pronged approach. That does seem to be something that your government has been very wary of. We have seen around 3,000 people out, the prison muster dropped by about 3,000. How can you say you're having a multi-pronged approach when you are not putting people who need to be in prison in prison?
Part of what I was talking about primarily there, but I will address your question because you're talking about adults, and a lot of what I was saying was talking about children and young people. And I'm not going to agree that incarceration is the right way forward for 10 to 14-year-olds, and I don't think anybody would. But I'm not saying at any point that there shouldn't be consequences for actions. They need to be appropriate and they need to be fairly applied.
So you are comfortable with the drop in that prison muster by 3,000 over the term of your government's administration?
As I said, I think...
you haven't been there for the entire...
No, I haven't been there for the entire...
So it's not all your fault?
No, I hope that none of it's my fault. Look, I think one of the things that we need to look at is appropriate and fairly applied punishment. And you've got to remember that judges are always sentencing within sentencing guidelines laid down in the Sentencing Act. So this isn't something that they just snatch out of the air. But if it's not working, we need to look at it and review it.
Raf, ACT wants ankle bracelets on 11-year-olds. National wants ankle bracelets on 10-year-olds, while Labour wants ankle bracelets on 12-year-olds. Isn't that debate part of the problem?
Look, I think, following on from what Sarah said, I mean, she's right. I mean, there are three bits to it. There is prevention, there is deterrence, and there's consequences. One bit we haven't really talked about is the deterrence. We have made a proposal for 150 community constables here in Christchurch on the streets 24/7, operating out of 10 police kiosks around the city in key areas, particularly malls, transit hubs. Well, I sat on Andy Costa's committee. I know how it works. Well, actually, okay, let me go back. The government can actually do whatever it wants. So, it's like... Okay, I do know because I've actually had this conversation with the Commissioner. So that is a policy. That's the thing. We want to fund the police to provide these services, okay? You haven't because there are no police on the streets. Well, actually, I didn't interrupt you, so let me speak. You had 5 minutes talking about this. Okay, this is really critical. And the whole point about deterrence is people need to feel safe in their communities. They feel safe when they see constables on the streets walking around and dealing with day-to-day issues that come up. The kids down at the bus stops or the transit hubs or in town see the police around. That will really help. The prevention issues, yes. I worked with children of prisoners for 6 years. I know this stuff inside out. And yes, these homes are damaged. The kids coming out of them don't have the role models. It needs a wraparound service. We know that it works. We know that it's a good return on investment. I think the bit, Martin, going back to your question around consequences, I don't think we've actually landed on a good outcome, which is how to deal with the offender. And I think we need more work. We need more debate about it. We need to think, do we put them back in the homes that they've come out of and been out on the streets committing crimes, or do we put them somewhere else whilst we work out how to help them with those issues at home or whatever? And I think banging them up in prison obviously doesn't particularly help, but what do we do? I don't think we have the answer to that yet, but I think it's a question that we do need to answer.
Damien Grant, your question, please.
A bit of porridge never hurt anybody. Can I just... Can I answer that? Yes, you can.
You could say, yes, you essentially want to take that person off the streets, okay? But putting them in to a place with other criminals, I don't think helps. So if we can solve that problem, which is essentially taking that person off the streets, but providing them with services that they need, then they're not out on the streets, but they're being rehabilitated. Now, if you chuck them into general prison, that's where we get the high rates of recidivism.
Why are they on the streets in the first place? What are you going to do to stop those? Because this doesn't happen in a vacuum, Raf. So why are we seeing 12 and 13-year-olds committing this sort of criminal behaviour? What is driving that?
I can tell you, endemic poverty. And it's poverty of existence, the way that people... I've been into these houses, and I tell you, as a guy who lived across the road there in Fendleton, in a big house, going down the road here to visit a house where there is offending, it was a shock, an almighty shock. But we worked, with that family for a long time, and we had the positive outcomes. But you need a wraparound service. You're asking me, how did they get to that position? I tell you, poor education, poor incomes, poor housing, intergenerational issues. If we solve that, the social determinants of crime, the social determinants of health, we will solve a lot of problems, and more importantly, save a shed load of money.
Thank you, Raf.
I just want to pick up on that. That issue, though, right? So I strongly disagree with that. That
Surprise,
poverty,
surprise.
Have you been in these houses? Because I have. I did 6 years. I did 6 years as a budget service advisor. I know what it's like. You don't really know how people are living in this country.
Raf, please don't debate me on that issue. But the idea...
Don't debate him on issues.
The idea that because you are poor, you are more likely to commit crime, I think is deeply offensive. I think it's an issue. Look at me, right? I didn't come from a poor background. It is an issue fundamentally of values. If you come from a poor household that has good values, you are not likely to commit crime. I think blaming it on poverty is a cop-out.
Well,
thank you, Mr.
Well, hold on a
Republican.
second. This is in endemic poverty. And when I say it's poverty of existence, that is a poverty of consciousness. So, yeah, you can be poor and you can still have very good values. Your kids can go to the local school and they can come home, do their homework, read before they go to sleep, make their bed, whatever. Okay, so yeah, but actually, culturally, that doesn't seem to be what has happened here. That is a problem.
Thank you, Raf. Hamish Campbell, the young people who climbed on top of an Orangatamariki detention centre last month did so because the staff were organising fight clubs and filming them. Staff are only given 2 weeks training. How will locking more children up in detention centres staffed with sadists going to help the youth crime situation?
So we have... I can't hear that. Look, we're suggesting that there should be a serious youth offenders category for people that are ringleaders in some of these crimes, and we are suggesting that we're going to put them in military academies. And of course, it's also about giving them rehabilitation. It's taking them out of the environment which is leading them down this path of crime. I think it's really important that we address the drivers of crime. In Canterbury, only 64% of school children regularly attended school in term one. And I don't think that the 40-odd% that didn't go to school were sitting playing at home playing tiddlywinks. Also, what's happening is these kids are falling out of education, they're falling out of society, and they're looking for other ways to feel involved, and that's where they're going to gangs, it's maybe teaming up and going ram raiding. So we really need to address those issues to stop this life of crime.
Follow-up question. Labour have ruled New Zealand first out because of its extremism. Why won't National rule New Zealand first out?
We don't need to. Look, we're working hard to get as many party votes as we can so we can have a mandate to govern. That's it.
Damien?
What is National? You talk about school attendance. What is National actually going to do to allow those people in charge of our schools or whatever other facilities are relevant to fix the school attendance problem? Because all I've seen so far is Mr. Luxon say we're going to commit to at least an hour a day of education in schools, which seems an incredibly low threshold. What is National going to do to allow better than zero, true. What is National going to do to give those people on the ground the power to do something about the non-attendance?
One of the points that's often not discussed when talking about truancy is actually the link between school achievement and actually attendance. If kids get to high school and they're struggling to read and write, they're not going to want to go there. So actually getting back and teaching our primary school kids, our intermediate school kids, teaching them the basics brilliantly so they can read and write, they're more likely to be able to achieve and then attend school.
So, but hold on, I'll just stay with that. So the idea that the Minister of Education is going to sit there on whatever floor of the beehive, send an edict down, it's exactly the same principles on the same salary with the same infrastructure. Everything is going to be the same except a memo from whoever the Minister of Education is. That's not going to work, is it? What do you need to make systemic structural changes? What are you going to do?
Yeah, no, we are suggesting that what's going to happen is we're going to outline in the curriculum that there's going to be certain things need to be taught at each year level, and we are going to have regular testing so we can monitor the progression of students. We also need to provide teachers and teacher trainees with the materials and the training so they can actually teach the basics comfortably, so they have the skills so they can pass it on to our children.
Thank you, Hamish. Mike, when it comes to crime, the Greens want to heal broken people, whereas the public want vengeance and suffering. Can the Greens' compassion ever win this debate when the electorate are this frightened and angry?
Look, I think the country needs the Greens to win this debate. Look, the reality, the crime we're seeing didn't happen overnight. It's taken actually a number of years to get to this point, and it's actually going to take a number of years to fix. And there's not one easy solution for it. But the reality is the solution is not by putting an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. It's by putting a fence at the top. And we need to invest in support mechanisms, and we need to invest in the most vulnerable communities, the most vulnerable people in our communities, which we have not been doing. People, as already been alluded to, are not born bad. People are born good, but they're born into environments that don't work. And actually, the state has a duty of responsibility to help those people, to put the services around those people, to ensure they have everything they need to thrive. If we start looking after people with care and compassion,
Follow-up
then
question.
actually we'll see much better outcomes.
Follow-up question, Mike. Thank you for that. The Green Party want to righteously challenge capitalism, as I do, and draws much support from the environmental protest movement. Today, it's New Zealand First accused of extremism. When will the Greens be painted with the same brush?
Look, the Greens will never be... you'll never be able to compare the Greens with New Zealand First.
Damien, your question, please.
That's because New Zealand First have been in government. Sorry, that
was aimed at top.
That was That was a bit mean. Okay, so I just want to come back talking about children. So one of the claims or one of the theories is that part of the problem is we're now dealing with second, third and fourth generation children growing up in welfare homes. And that's a real massive intergenerational problem. It's not a New Zealand specific problem, but it's a real problem. Is doing more of the same, but better, really going to get the solution that you want?
Yeah, look, it is a systematic problem that's been happening for many, many generations. And I do think we need to actually step back and have a look at actually the approach that has been taken and potentially using a Western democracy and the approach that's happening across the seas is not the right approach for Aotearoa New Zealand, where we're a bicultural country. And we
are a multicultural, sir. This is a real issue that is systemic inside your side of politics. You see the world, and correct me if I'm wrong. You see the world as people of the treaty and tangata whenua, right? And that comment there, was that a slip of the tongue, or is that how you see New Zealand?
New Zealand's a bicultural country that is founded on No, absolutely not. New Zealand is a bicultural country.
Let him finish.
No. New Zealand is a bicultural country with multicultural communities. It is founded on Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and that treaty has been constantly breached for 180 years. Until we actually accept that and address those issues, we will never move forward as a country.
Thank you, Damien, for opening that can of fucking worms. Damien, you have a personal question for Hamish Campbell.
Bold
Stop
call.
dividing the country, Damien.
Sorry?
Stop dividing the country. You have a personal question for Hamish Campbell.
Do I?
Yes.
All right, Hamish. Now, I'm suddenly a bit nervous about my research, given that for some reason I thought Mike was a builder. But your background is in virology, and okay, well, tell us what you did your PhD on, because this is really interesting.
Is that the question?
Yes, that's a question. You did a PhD.
Yes, I've got a PhD.
That's more impressive than Martin and I have ever done in our lives. So tell us what you did.
I have a Bachelor of Science in Genetics, and I have a PhD in Cancer and Viruses.
So that is. I mean, that is a seriously, and you're involved in MS, multiple sclerosis research as well?
I resigned once I took over the candidacy of the National Party.
So why, given that you are actually out there doing God's work, actually trying to do something that will better the lives of many of us, why, Hamish, why are you throwing that away to go into the soulless cesspit of politics?
New Zealand has an amazing tradition in great scientists. Great minds have come out of New Zealand, and we really need to unleash them. And so that is what my target is.
Damien, you have a personal question for Mike Davidson.
I think it is. I am gutted that we are losing somebody of your calibre. Mike, please tell me you did the coast to coast.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I got. Tell us about, because that is an incredibly impressive physical and mental achievement, and I am in awe of that, sir. I am in awe of that, sir. Just be quiet. Tell us what that experience was like and what it felt like to get to the end.
It was actually a really moving experience to be able to touch, the stones on the beach on the west coast. run, bike, kayak across, the whole of the South Island, over the Alps, and then touch the stones and water on the other side was actually really, really special. To be able to do that with my father, who was on my support team, actually meant a lot. So, but the amount of training and dedication that goes into doing the coast to coast, to actually be able to do it and not basically kill yourself, takes a lot of effort.
Damien, you have a question for Sarah.
Did that give you the mental resilience to fight as a Green Party candidate in Ireland? Because that, Sarah, is almost as impressive.
I think being on City Council for 6 years did that.
Damien, you have a personal question for Sarah.
Sarah,
In my history as a builder,
sorry?
in my past life as a builder,
Well, your maiden speech was beautiful. I have to say.
Oh, thank you.
In your past life, you were a midwife. I'm going to ask you the same question. So there you are at the most critical point of people's lives. 3 people involved there. You threw that all away for the gormless cesspit of politics, Sarah. Why did you do that, and was it worth it?
You're right. And being a midwife is extraordinary, and midwives are extraordinary. And I take my hat off to them. I really do every day. For me, this is a job of service. This is a job of serving the community. And that was what I did as a midwife. That was what I did as a midwifery lecturer. So it was just an extension, really, of that service. I'm incredibly proud of bringing my expert knowledge, my subject matter knowledge, into the ACC birthing injuries legislation. So that's the single thing I'm most proud of. 28,000 people every year will have birthing injuries covered by ACC as a result of the legislation that I crafted.
Damien, you have a personal question for Raf.
What was that, sorry?
I'd love to chat about your father lived in Jersey under the Nazis. Is that how old was he? How old was he?
My dad, he was between, I think, 5 and 10, roughly. Yeah, and he lived in Jersey under the German occupation. Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Is he still with us?
It is. Oh. Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Is he in the audience?
Yeah, no, he's not, sadly. He still lives in Jersey. He's 88 now. So he finds
Will he be watching on the live stream?
Sorry, he will be. He will watch it. I'll send him a link. But no, he'll probably be...
Good on you, mate.
Hey, Dad. Love ya.
Damien, you have a personal question for Raf.
Raf, sir, leading the top party is, and you have done incredibly well, because this was, at least for a lot of us, saw this as a Gareth Morgan vanity project. You have breathed life into this organisation and given it something above and beyond what it started from, which is incredibly impressive. Where do you see this party going? Because we're not too sure how the election will come out. Maybe some tactical voting will get you over the line. But what's your vision from the top party 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, thank you. It has been a hard road. I mean, the reason I took this on, and for those of me who know me from council, when I left council in 2019, it was under the 15th of March attack cloud, and that took sort of the next 2 years of my life dealing with that. But I thought I was done with politics. But what I felt is we are in such difficult times. And, I've been around, I'm 56, I came out of university in the mid-80s.
You're 56?
Yeah.
You're 1 year younger than me.
Yeah, well, it's all the...
See what libertarianism does to you? See what libertarianism does to you?
It's good. Do you know what the secret? Good moisturizer. So I've been through a lot of, I traded financial markets, I've been through a lot of cycles. We are at a massive tipping point, which for people who were here in the 80s will remember what that's like. Economic tipping points, climate tipping points, social tipping points. This is why we're having so much polarization. And I thought we need a fresh voice at the table who can be non-partisan. I mean, we are non-partisan, we're not left or right, but I'm really focused on the future. I've spent the last 30 years thinking about big macro issues, where we're going, where technology is going to take us, the impacts of climate change. I was working on that over 20 years ago, how we invest to build prosperous futures. And I thought, okay, even if we don't get in, and I think we will, we've got a chance, and we've got a great team, and I've selected people that I think will be able to make a positive contribution. But I think it's worth it because we need somebody in Parliament, not New Zealand First. I mean, that New Zealand First actually is the past. That is the past. We need some parties who are thinking about the future and have the ability to handle conversations and big challenges in a collaborative way. So I think we have a part to play. I don't want to be Prime Minister. We don't want to take over the government. We think
You
that
don't want to take over the
Thank you,
government. No,
candidates.
we think we have a role to play, and that's why I'm doing this.
Thank you, candidates. We must now wrap with our final word on the direction of New Zealand in the polling. 48% of Ilam voters believe the country is moving in the wrong direction. We have 24,717 people on the social housing wait list. We spend $1 million a day keeping beneficiaries in unsafe motels. In term 4 of last year, only 50.6% of students were regularly attending class. 12% of children live in low-income households. 55% of Kiwis are struggling financially. Home ownership is at its lowest rate in 70 years, and we are facing some of the worst food inflation in 30 years. Candidates, you each have 60 seconds to answer where you think the country is going and how voting for you and your party will impact that direction. From the New Zealand National Party, Hamish, Campbell, your time starts now.
Yes, well, we're looking around. It looks like a lot of things are broken, but I'm actually an urgent optimist. I think we can fix a lot of these problems, and we have a plan. It's about getting the economy back strong so we can deliver better health outcomes and deliver better educational standards for our kids so they can reach the goals and aspirations that they want to reach, and also make sure that they live in a safe and secure environment.
Thank you, Hamish. From the Green Party, Mike Davidson, your time starts now.
Thank you. Look, I think the country is pointed in the right direction. It is not going hard enough and fast enough. We're focused on a lot of social issues. What we haven't really touched on is the climate. It is the biggest issue facing us now. The Green Party has been talking about this for 30 years. And actually the reality is in front of us now. We're seeing the effects of climate change. It's not going to just impact us now, but it's going to have devastating impacts on future generations if we don't put in the right measures in place now.
Thank you, Mike. From the Labour Party, Sarah Pallett, your time starts now.
Kia ora. When I was elected, I made a promise, and what I promised was that I would work hard every day for everyone in Ireland, whether they voted for me or not, and I've kept that promise. I've worked hard for everybody who's come into my office, and all people that I've met at the many, many events that I've attended on the street, at constituent clinics in the electorate. And I've helped hundreds of constituents. I've helped people who've come to me with problems. I've helped the parents of a baby who was critically ill in Starship. They needed some guidance to get financial support so that they could pause work so they could be with their baby. I've helped a man with disabilities get a new bed. Doesn't sound like a big thing, but that's a man who's accessed the funding to get a bed and he can now have a good night's sleep.
Time.
I've been responsible for the 16 avenues of memorial trees.
Time.
And the Spark cell phone tower in Maclean's Island. I'm really proud of my
Sarah.
reputation.
And from the top party, Raf Manji, your time starts now.
Thank you. Look, we have some difficult decisions to make. We are at a tipping point. The country is going backwards. It is stagnating. It has no clear path forward. For us, it's quite simple. The decisions we make now will impact us in 30 years. And those decisions need to be about seriously investing in our future, opening up our economy, inviting investors and talent in to drive the next generation of New Zealand prosperity. We think Christchurch has a story to tell. I can tell it here from Ilam. I want to take that story to Wellington and be a strong voice for Christchurch. Thank you.
Comrades, a round of applause for all the candidates tonight, please. Comrades, that's the show. Thank you for tuning into this most important of civil duties, which is to vote. As I stated at the beginning, in an age of disinformation, misinformation and apathy, our democracy needs engaged citizens like never before. Our thanks to the candidates, Gravity Credit Management, the Daily Blog, the Working Group, the Taxpayers Union, Courier Polling, Slipstream Media and Juice TV Freeview 200 for bringing this evening's debate to the live stream masses. We will see you 7 p.m. next Tuesday for our next live stream debate in Auckland, where Willie Jackson, David Seymour, Raf Manji, John Tamahiri and Paul Goldsmith will fight it out in a party cage debate from the palatial Missio Cafe and Bar in Ilam and the mighty Christchurch, Kia ora and ka pai, New Zealand. You stay classy, Aotearoa. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the greatest NZ live political podcast in the world, The Working Group, hosted by beloved left-wing broadcaster Comrade Bomber Bradbury, with the best political panel in New Zealand media, reviewing the week, setting the agenda, avoiding defamation. The Working Group is brought to you by Gravity Credit Management. When the weight of capitalism is becoming the event horizon of an imploding black hole, call 0800 Gravity, and our team will get blood out of a stone. That's 0800 Gravity. This is The Working Group.